The bright light faded from Harin's eyes as she stood in the dark alley. Her body felt strange and heavy. The biosuit had worked perfectly. She looked down at her hands, small, soft, with 5 fingers instead of her natural 4. Human hands. She touched her face carefully. The skin was warm and smooth. Her reflection in a puddle showed her new form, a young human woman with dark hair and brown eyes. The Empire's scientists had done good work. Even she could not tell the difference. Harin walked to the street and looked around. Seoul was loud and busy even at night. Cars moved in long lines with bright lights. Humans walked everywhere, talking and laughing. They seemed so careless, so unaware of danger. Perfect. Her first stop was the research building where she would work. The Empire had created all the right documents for her. Dr. Harin Kim, behavior scientist. The humans would never know. The building was tall and made of glass. Inside, humans worked at desks with small computers. They drank coffee and ate food, at their desks. Harin had studied human habits for months, but seeing them in person was different. "You must be the new researcher," said a woman with gray hair. "I'm Dr. Park. Welcome to our team." Harin smiled the way humans did. "Thank you. I'm happy to be here." It was easy. Too easy. The humans asked no hard questions. They showed her to her desk and gave her access to their computers. In one day, she had learned more about human society than the Empire expected her to find in a week. But what she found was confusing. The humans worked long hours, but not because someone forced them. They stayed late because they wanted to help, people they had never met. They shared their discoveries with other scientists, even ones from different countries. On the Vorthak homeworld, this would be treason. Harin watched a young scientist named Lee work for 16 hours straight. He was trying to find a cure for a disease that affected children. When Harin asked why he worked so hard, Lee looked surprised. "Because kids are dying," he said. "If I can help even one child live, it's worth it." This made no sense. Lee had no children of his own. The sick children were not from his family or even his country. By Vorthak logic, he gained nothing from helping them. Yet he worked until his eyes were red and his hands shook from too much coffee. Harin wrote her first report that night. Humans display irrational behavior patterns. They waste resources on individuals who provide no strategic value. This weakness can be exploited. But as days passed, she saw more strange things. A security guard named Kim shared his lunch with a homeless man every day. The man was dirty and smelled bad, but Kim treated him like a friend. A cleaning woman named Mrs. Cho sent half her salary to her sister's family in another country. Her sister's children were not even her own blood, but Mrs. Cho worked 2 jobs to pay for their school. Dr. Park, the gray-haired woman, spent her weekends teaching science to poor children for free. She bought supplies with her own money and never asked for anything back. These humans confused Harin. The Empire taught that weakness led to death, but humans seemed to choose weakness on purpose. They helped their enemies. They shared their resources. They cared about strangers, and somehow they were thriving. Their technology advanced faster than the Empire's report suggested. Their cities grew larger and cleaner. Their people lived longer and healthier lives. None of this should be possible with such wasteful behavior. Harin began to study harder. She watched humans in parks, in markets, in their homes. She listened to their conversations and read their books. She learned about their history. What she found made her question everything. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. But they did not just survive. They grew stronger. Every time something terrible happened, humans helped each other rebuild. They turned their worst moments into their greatest triumphs. They had a saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." The Vorthak had a similar saying, "What doesn't kill you is inefficient." Harin realized the difference was important. After 2 weeks on Earth, she received a message from the fleet commander. The invasion ships were moving closer to Earth's solar system. They wanted her report on human military weaknesses. Harin stared at her computer screen. She was supposed to write about weak points in human defenses, places where Vorthak forces could attack with minimal resistance, ways to break human morale quickly. Instead, she found herself writing something else. Humans do not follow logical, behavioral patterns. They make decisions based on emotions rather than strategic advantage. This appears to be a weakness, but observation suggests it may be their greatest strength. They cannot be predicted because they do not always act in their own best interest. They often act in the interest of others, even strangers or enemies. She deleted that paragraph and started again. Human military technology is advanced but not superior to Vorthak systems. However, human soldiers display unusual psychological profiles. They appear willing to die for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. This irrationality makes them unpredictable in combat situations. She deleted that too. Every time she tried to write about human weaknesses, she found herself describing their strengths instead. Their kindness was not stupidity. Their generosity was not waste. Their willingness to help others was not tactical error. It was something the Vorthak had forgotten long ago. Something they had removed from their own nature in pursuit of perfect efficiency. It was what made humans dangerous. The next morning, Dr. Park mentioned something that changed Harin's mission completely. There's a relief coordinator looking for researchers to document crisis response behavior, Dr. Park said. He's going to Myanmar next week. Dangerous area, but the work is important. His name is Jin Ha. Impressive man. He's rebuilt the same village 3 times after it was destroyed. Most people would give up, but not him. Harin volunteered immediately. Understanding human leadership was crucial for invasion planning. She expected to find a typical military commander using followers for personal glory. She had no idea she was about to meet the human who would change everything she believed about war, peace, and what it truly meant to be strong. The Empire thought they were sending a spy to catalog weaknesses. Instead, they had sent Harin to discover why humans would never be conquered. The helicopter landed in a cloud of dust and noise. Harin stepped out and looked around. The refugee camp spread before her like a small city made of tents and metal sheets. Thousands of people lived here. Children played between the shelters, while adults waited in long lines for food and water. This was not what Harin expected from a military operation. Dr. Kim. A man walked toward her. He was shorter than most Vorthak males, with dark hair and tired eyes. His clothes were simple, worn jeans and a dirty shirt. No uniform, no medals, no signs of rank. "I'm Jin Ha," he said, holding out his hand. "Thank you for coming. We need all the help we can get." His handshake was firm, but gentle. His smile seemed real. Harin had studied human facial expressions for months, but this was different. Jin Ha's kindness was not fake or calculated. It was simply who he was. "Welcome to our little corner of chaos," Jin Ha said, leading her through the camp. "I know. It looks like a mess, but there's a system to it. We've got medical tents here, food distribution there, and the school is in that blue building." "School?" Harin asked. "This is a refugee camp. Kids need to learn," Jin Ha replied. "Just because their homes were destroyed doesn't mean their futures should be too." They passed a medical tent where a young man was treating wounded people. Some wore military uniforms from one side of the local war. Others wore uniforms from the enemy side, but the medic treated them all the same way. "That's Quan," Jin Ha explained. "Best medic I've ever worked with. He doesn't care which side you're on. If you're hurt, he helps you." Harin watched Quan bandage a soldier's arm. The soldier had been trying to kill people in this very camp just days ago. Now Quan worked carefully to save his life. "Why?" Harin asked. "This man is your enemy." Quan looked up from his work. "He's hurt," he said simply. "That's the only side that matters right now." This made no tactical sense. In Vorthak military doctrine, you eliminated enemies. You did not heal them so they could fight you again. But Quan worked with the same care he showed to friendly soldiers. Jin Ha led Harin to the command tent. Inside, maps covered every surface. Radio operators talked to teams across the region. It looked like a military headquarters, but the people wore no uniforms. They were teachers, doctors, engineers, farmers, regular people who had chosen to help. "We rebuild the school every time it gets bombed," Jinha explained, pointing to a map. "This will be the 4th time. The local warlords don't like education. They think it threatens their power." "Then why rebuild it?" Harin asked. "You know it will be destroyed again." Jinha smiled that same gentle smile. "Because between each bombing, kids get to learn. They get to dream about better futures. They get to be children instead of victims. Every day the school stands is a victory." Harin began to understand something that terrified her. These humans were not weak. They were something much more dangerous. They were unstoppable. Over the next week, Harin watched miracles happen every day. When the water well was poisoned, Jinha's team dug a new one. When supplies were stolen, they brought more supplies. When local fighters attacked the camp, the aid workers formed a shield around the civilians and refused to move. "Sir, we should evacuate," radioed their military contact during one attack. "You're outnumbered and outgunned." "Negative," Jinha replied calmly, helping to stack sandbags around the medical tent. "We have 200 civilians here with nowhere to go. We hold the line." Harin crouched behind the sandbags, watching humans transform from aid workers into warriors. But they never stopped being human. Quan continued treating wounded people even as bullets flew overhead. Teachers kept the children calm with songs and stories. Engineers fixed damaged equipment while explosions shook the ground. They turned their compassion into armor, their love into weapons. The attack lasted 3 days. The aid workers had no heavy weapons, no air support, no reinforcements. They had only their refusal to abandon the people who needed them. On the 3rd day, the attackers withdrew, not because they were defeated by superior firepower, but because they could not understand what they were fighting. How do you defeat people who will not be defeated? How do you break people who get stronger every time they are broken? That night, Harin sat alone with her encrypted communicator. Messages from the Vorthak fleet filled the screen. They wanted targeting data for human military bases, lists of key leaders to eliminate, psychological profiles showing how to break human morale. Harin stared at the screen and realized she could not write any of those reports. The humans had no key leaders because everyone was a leader. Their military bases were everywhere because every human was a potential soldier. Their morale could not be broken because it came from something deeper than fear or pride. It came from love. Jinha found her sitting by the ruined school, watching workers prepare to rebuild it for the 4th time. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I'm thinking about home," Harin said carefully. "About people who believe strength comes from conquest, who think compassion is weakness." "And what do you believe?" Jinha asked. Harin watched children playing in the rubble of their destroyed classroom. Tomorrow this would be a school again. Next week, it might be rubble again. But the week after, that these humans would rebuild it once more. "I believe," Harin said slowly, "that I've been wrong about everything." Jinha nodded. "That's the hardest thing to admit. But it's also the most important. Being wrong means you can learn. Learning means you can grow. Growing means you can become better than you were." Harin felt something break inside her chest. Not break apart, but break open. Like a shell cracking to let new life emerge. She was falling in love. Not just with Jinha, but with humanity itself. With their impossible, illogical, beautiful refusal to let the universe make them cruel. The Vorthak fleet was coming to conquer a species they thought was weak. They were about to discover their greatest mistake. The attack came at dawn on their 3rd week in the camp. Not just a few fighters this time, but a real army. 300 soldiers with heavy weapons surrounded the refugee camp. Their leader used a loudspeaker to make his demands clear. "Send out the foreign aid workers. Leave our country, or we kill everyone in the camp." Harin stood in the command tent, watching Jinha study the tactical display. By every rule of warfare she knew, this was hopeless. The aid team had maybe 50 people who could fight. The refugees were mostly women, children, and elderly people. They had light weapons against an army. Any logical commander would negotiate. Any smart leader would find a way to withdraw and save their own people. Jinha picked up the radio. "This is Jinha to all team leaders. We're not leaving. Prepare defensive positions around the civilian areas. Priority is protecting the refugees, not ourselves." Harin felt her heart skip. Both of them. The biological redundancy her human disguise could not completely hide. "Sir, this is suicide," said the military liaison over the radio. "You have no chance of winning." "We're not trying to win," Jinha replied calmly. "We're trying to do what's right." Harin watched humans prepare for a battle they could not win. But instead of despair, she saw something that made her species military analysts completely wrong about humanity. She saw transformation. Quan moved his medical supplies to the center of the camp and began teaching children how to help treat wounded people. Not because he expected them to fight, but because he wanted them to feel useful instead of helpless. The teachers gathered the youngest children and started a game of hide-and-seek that was really practice for taking cover during bombardment. They made it fun so the kids would not be scared. The engineers worked with refugees to build better fortifications using tent poles, sandbags, and pieces of metal. Everyone helped, even the elderly and disabled. This was not a military unit preparing for battle. This was a community choosing to stand together. The first assault came at noon. Heavy gunfire and explosions shook the camp. Harin crouched behind sandbags, expecting the defenses to collapse quickly. Instead, something impossible happened. The humans did not just fight back. They fought with purpose. Every shot they fired was aimed carefully to protect civilians. Every position they held was chosen to create safe zones for refugees. They were not trying to kill enemies. They were trying to save lives. When one defensive position was overrun, the team there did not retreat in panic. They fell back in order, making sure all the refugees in that area moved to safety first. 3 aid workers died, buying time for 50 civilians to escape. Harin had studied thousands of battles in Vorthak, military history. She had never seen soldiers sacrifice themselves for people who were not even their own species. "Why?" she asked Jinha during a brief pause in the fighting. "Why are you doing this?" Jinha reloaded his rifle and smiled that gentle smile that was becoming so familiar. "Because someone has to. Because these people deserve to live. Because if we don't stand up for what's right, who will?" The second assault came at sunset. This time, the attackers used different tactics. They targeted the medical tent, the school, the water supply. They wanted to break human morale by destroying what humans cared about most. It backfired completely. Every attack on the school made the teachers fight harder. Every threat to the medical tent made Quan work faster to save lives. Every attempt to cut off water made the engineers more creative in finding new sources. The humans were not getting weaker, they were getting stronger. Harin began to understand the terrible truth. Humanity's compassion was not a weakness to exploit. It was a weapon more devastating than any technology the Vorthak possessed. The third assault came at midnight. The enemy commander was getting desperate. He launched a full attack on all sides, trying to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. In the darkness, Harin saw something that would change her life forever. Jinha was helping evacuate wounded civilians when a grenade exploded near him. Shrapnel cut his arm and leg. He was bleeding and could barely stand. Any rational person would seek medical treatment. Instead, Jinha picked up a little girl who had been knocked down by the explosion. He carried her to safety, leaving a trail of his own blood. Then he went back for an elderly man, then a wounded refugee, then another child. He kept going until he collapsed from blood loss. Quan found him and started emergency treatment. "You idiot," Quan said, but his voice was full of love. "You almost died." "But they didn't," Jinha whispered, looking at the civilians he had saved. That was the moment Harin understood everything. Humans were not just another species. They Were evolution's answer to a question the universe had been asking for billions of years? What happens when intelligence meets unlimited compassion? The answer was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. They became unstoppable. The enemy withdrew at dawn, not because they were defeated by superior firepower, but because they could not comprehend what they were fighting. How do you defeat people who get stronger every time they are hurt? How do you break people who turn their pain into power? Harin sat beside Jinha's hospital bed, watching him sleep. Her encrypted communicator buzzed with urgent messages from the Vorthak fleet. They wanted her final report. They wanted targeting coordinates. They wanted the intelligence that would make conquering humanity quick and easy. Harin looked at the messages and felt something she had never experienced before: absolute clarity. She was not going to help the Vorthak Empire destroy humanity. She was going to save humanity from the Vorthak Empire. Jinha opened his eyes and saw her crying. Human tears from her human disguise, but the emotions behind them were completely real. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. "Everything," Harin whispered. "And nothing. And I don't know how to fix it." Jinha reached out and took her hand. "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what humans do. We face the impossible problems together and somehow find a way through them." Harin squeezed his hand and made her choice. She was going to become human in the only way that mattered. She was going to choose love over logic, hope over certainty, and standing together over standing alone. The Vorthak fleet was coming to conquer a weak species. They were about to meet the most dangerous force in the galaxy, humans who refused to give up. The sky above Earth burned with the light of 37 Vorthak warships. Each ship was the size of a city, armed with weapons that could destroy continents. They hung in space like metal storms, waiting to unleash death upon the world below. Harin stood in the emergency command center that humans had built in just 18 hours. Around her, people who should have been running in terror instead worked with calm focus. Military officers stood beside teachers. Scientists worked next to farmers. Grandmothers organized supply lines while teenagers ran communications. This was not how conquered species were supposed to behave. "Ma'am, we're reading massive energy signatures from the alien fleet," reported a young technician to General Park, the human military commander. "Our satellites show weapons that could glass the entire planet." "Then we better make sure they don't get the chance," General Park replied. She turned to Jinha, who sat beside Harin despite his injuries from the refugee camp battle. "You said your friend here knows something about these invaders?" Harin felt every eye in the room turn to her. Jinha squeezed her hand gently, giving her strength. "I know everything about them," Harin said quietly, "because I am one of them." The room went silent. Soldiers reached for their weapons. Harin saw fear and anger on human faces, but Jinha never let go of her hand. "Explain," General Park said coldly. Harin took a deep breath. "My name is Harin, but I am not human. I am Vorthak. I was sent here to spy on your species, to find your weaknesses so my people could conquer you easily." "And did you find them?" asked Dr. Lee, the scientist from Harin's first assignment. Harin looked around the room at all the humans who had become her friends, people who had shown her kindness even when they had no reason to trust her. "Yes," she said, "I found your weaknesses. You care too much about strangers. You help your enemies. You waste resources on people who cannot help you back. You make decisions with your hearts instead of your heads." The humans in the room looked confused. These were exactly the things they were proud of. "But I also found something else," Harin continued. "Those weaknesses are why you cannot be conquered. My people have been studying warfare for thousands of years. We know how to defeat every type of enemy except one." "What type is that?" General Park asked. "The type that refuses to be defeated," Harin said. "The type that gets stronger every time you hurt them. The type that turns love into a weapon more powerful than any technology." Jinha smiled despite the danger above their heads. "So what do we do now?" Before Harin could answer, alarms began ringing. The technician at the communications console went pale. General, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They're demanding our immediate surrender. The main screen lit up with the image of Fleet Commander Zakthor, Harin's superior. His 4 eyes glowed with cold intelligence. His voice was like metal scraping stone. Humans of Earth, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and watch your world burn slowly. General Park stepped forward. This is General Park of the Earth Defense Forces. We refuse your demands. Zakthor's eyes narrowed. You have no weapons that can harm our ships. You have no allies to save you. Why do you choose death over submission? Because we're human, Jinha said, moving to stand beside the general. And humans don't kneel. The alien commander studied Jinha with something like curiosity. You are injured. Your forces are vastly outnumbered. Logic demands surrender. Logic is overrated, Jinha replied. We prefer hope. Harin watched Zakthor's expression change. She had seen that look before during briefings about species that had fought too hard against conquest. It was confusion mixed with growing worry. The Vorthak Empire had never encountered anything like humanity. You have 1 hour to reconsider, Zakthor said. After that, we begin orbital bombardment. The transmission ended. The room erupted in discussion about defensive strategies and evacuation plans, but Harin was already moving to a secure terminal. What are you doing? General Park demanded. Something that will probably get me executed by both our species, Harin replied, typing rapidly. I'm sending a message to every human communication system on the planet, and to every ship in the Vorthak fleet. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She was composing the most important message in galactic history. People of Earth, her broadcast began. My name is Harin. I am not human, but I have learned what it means to be human. In 1 hour, my people will try to destroy your world. They think you are weak because you choose compassion over conquest. They are wrong. Around the globe, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. In the Vorthak fleet, confused officers tried to trace the signal that was somehow reaching their secured channels. To the humans listening, Harin continued, you are about to face the greatest test in your species' history. Ships will fall from your sky like metal rain. Cities will burn, people will die, and you will face a choice, surrender or fight. She paused, looking at Jinha, who nodded encouragingly. I have seen what you choose. I have watched teachers die, protecting children who are not their own. I have seen doctors heal enemies who tried to kill them. I have watched ordinary people become heroes simply because someone needed help. On the fleet's command ship, Commander Zakthor was growing alarmed. This was not how conquered species behaved. To my former people in the fleet above, Harin, broadcast, you came here expecting to find prey. Instead, you found the apex predators of the galaxy. Not because humans are the strongest or smartest, but because they are the only species that weaponized love itself. She stood up, Jinha beside her, facing the camera that would carry her words across 2 worlds. Humanity will not surrender because humanity cannot surrender. It is not in their nature. They will die first, and somehow that makes them stronger than any of us. You want to conquer Earth? You will have to go through every single human on this planet, and they will make you pay for every meter of ground with blood and courage and stubborn, impossible hope. The broadcast reached every corner of human space and every ship in the Vorthak fleet. What happened next changed the galaxy forever. Humans began to respond. Not their leaders, not their governments, the people themselves. From every city, every town, every settlement came the same message. We are human. We do not surrender. Come and take our world if you can. In the Vorthak fleet, hardened warriors who had conquered 17 star systems felt something they had never experienced before. Fear. They were about to fight the most dangerous enemy in the universe, a species that had turned love into warfare and made hope into a weapon that could shatter empires. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity had already won.